Hey, thanks so much for joining me today. I've got my good friend Mike Kim on today. He is a marketing genius, and I have learned a lot from him over the years. Really excited to have him, and thanks, Mike, for coming and sharing your wisdom today.
My pleasure. It's an honor to be here, and hopefully, I will add something of value to everybody.
Well, I always walk away with at least one or two good nuggets whenever I'm around you or like listening to anything or at your conferences or anything like that. So I'm sure people will walk away with at least something of value. But yeah, Mike, why don't you give people, if they've never heard of you, just give people who are listening a little bit of background about how you got into doing your own consulting like you do, what brought you to that, and what brought you ultimately to the marketing space at large?
Yeah. So before I got into marketing formally as a profession, I was the music director at a church in the Hartford, Connecticut area. Nobody really remembers that anymore. It feels like a completely different lifetime ago. And when I stepped away from that job, I didn't really know what I was going to do with my life. It's like that typical, like, I'm 30 something and what the heck am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I was married at the time. My ex and I moved back to New Jersey from Connecticut, and an old boss had contacted me. They were running an academy, after school academy, to prep high school students for their college entrance exams, SATs and ACTs.
Yeah.
And I had been a teacher at that school in my 20s.
Oh, interesting.
And so I'd always been like in touch with them. And when they found out I came back, they're like, "Hey, do you want to teach a few classes?" I was like, "No, like I don't know what I'm going to do in my life, but definitely don't want to do that." But I thought it'd be a good opportunity to like get a little bit more grounded and use
Hmm.
my brain again. To be totally honest, I felt like I did not use my brain at all during the 4 years that I was a music director. It was just like really, I was just doing music, and it's like,
Yeah, it's different.
totally different. It's
Yeah.
like, um, so I did that, and several months in, just part time, kind of teaching a couple classes, I was going home from work one day, and my boss asked me to come in, and her husband were like the proprietors of this
Mm.
academy. And she's like, "Can you look at this ad? What do you think about it?" And I was like, "Oh, this is terrible. Should change this, and change the." And she was like, "How in the world do you know how to do this?" I was like, "I don't know. I just know that that's really bad." And in retrospect, I think that I learned a lot of that stuff while I was at the church job,
Interesting.
because looking at it, basically we were marketing a live event every Sunday.
Yeah.
I had conferences that I was running and hosting several times a year, and those were my ideas. So I had to quite
Yeah.
literally market them.
You were the vision for it.
Yeah. And I wrote the liner notes for the albums that we recorded. We did a lot of stuff along those lines.
Mm.
And I realized I learned a lot of those soft skills without realizing it and not knowing what it was called. And so that's sort of how I stumbled into it. And I had also always been a strong writer.
Gotcha.
So when I left that church position and came back to New Jersey, I didn't really know what I was going to do. And then she just asked me, because we'd known each other so long. She trusted me. She's like, "Can you just take over the marketing for the company? Like, let us know what your price is." And I was like, kind of shocked. It was just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So of course I said yes, and I charged a lot of money, or I asked for a big salary, and she said yes. And
Wow.
long story short, within 2 years, the company had about 5 or 6x their bottom line revenue because of the
Mm.
marketing. They opened a couple of new locations, and they loved me. And I was like, "Peace out, see you later. I don't want to do this in this setting forever."
Right.
So as soon as I took that job, I was blogging and podcasting on the side,
Mm.
even before I launched out full time. And that's what garnered me the experience and the audience and a lot of the skills that I needed to develop and the mindset I needed to develop to be a business owner.
Yeah.
And I went full time in 2015. So it's been about 7 years now. Yeah.
Wow. That's fun. That's really fun. Okay, so do you play a lot of musical instruments then?
I play guitar and piano.
Okay.
I don't play them very much anymore. Not in a public setting. Sometimes friends find videos of me on YouTube doing that stuff, and they're like, "Wow, this another world, right? Like
Right.
totally different." Which is funny because for the longest time, Val, like I thought it was hard for me to see myself as a business owner or marketer
Mm,
because I hadn't just been doing that for 4 years as a profession, the music thing. I had
yeah.
been doing it since I was like a teenager,
Yeah.
like volunteering at my local church. And that was a big part of my identity. And I stepped away when I was in my mid 30s.
Yeah.
So, and I'm in my mid 40s now. So, I mean, that took up a lot more of my total life even
Yeah. It's a
today than,
percentage.
you know, yeah, marketing and business. But I'm really glad I made that transition. It's super fulfilling, and I wouldn't want to go through it again. I was young and dumb and energetic, and
Yeah.
hungry, and now I'm just like, okay, no, it's good. I figured out kind of where I want to be,
Yeah.
and this is good. So yeah, that's sort of where things are at.
Yeah, that's fun. That's fun. My mom's a music teacher, or was. She's now retired. Still my whole life, even to this day, even though she's retired, she also teaches piano lessons out of her home.
Hmm.
And so every afternoon, I remember coming home from school and, I'd have to be quiet and go upstairs, do my homework, do whatever in my bedroom. And then, piano lessons would be done around dinner time. But
Hmm.
we grew up with music all over the place. And, I did music at my church when I was in high school and got a scholarship at college to play music there. And, fun fact, they essentially paid me to learn how to play the clarinet because the music program was a little lacking at the time. So, I'm always curious whenever I hear people, coming from that kind of background as well. You just never know. Sometimes you have these random musical skills that no one would ever have thought of.
Yeah, I mean, also like I can look back now and see so many of the skills that I developed there, even the soft skills that were outside of performing,
Right.
have been so helpful in my business. How to rally people, how to cast vision, how to collaborate in a creative setting. Like that's all marketing,
Yeah.
right? A mix of um cold hard data and metrics and art and creativity. That's marketing.
Yep.
And so like I look back on it, I'm like very grateful for those experiences. Um I wouldn't be where I am. I'm not scared to talk to people. I'm not scared to be on stage. That's a
Exactly.
huge obstacle for a lot of people who are looking to do what we do.
Right.
So yeah, so
Agree.
it's
Agree
cool. It's
100%.
cool.
I mean, I can
Yeah.
visualize the like feelings of about to go into like a piano competition or do a piano recital and walking up to the stage and the nerves that I was feeling then
Mm-hmm.
and how at a young age just, each every few months having to do that, whether it was a competition or a recital, just getting up on a stage and performing for someone. And now when people ask me, "Oh, are you nervous to go up and do public speaking?" I really don't get very nervous.
Right.
And I think, that practice as a young kid doing that kind of musical performance compared to other activities you can do as a kid, I think was really helpful for me. So it's interesting that you have that parallel too.
Yeah, it's not normal. It's not normal, and then if you wait a little bit longer in life and you have folks like I coach a lot of folks who are trying to work their way out of corporate America
Hmm.
and like, build a business on the side and everything is terrifying, like because they just haven't had that experience. Like self-expression, if you're a musician, you're going to have to learn how to do that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, be okay with it, right? Um, the nerves. Most people's biggest, I think the biggest fear, I don't know if this is still true, but they used to say like the biggest fear people have by far is public speaking.
Hmm.
And I've been going on stage since I was young,
Yeah.
right? So there's a lot of advantages there in that sense. So
Yeah.
yes. Yep.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you are somebody that I know it seems like every year, and I even was listening in on one of your
Mm-hmm.
webinars recently, and you were talking about how you kind of have like, I think it was you think about it in like trimesters, which I loved. I loved that concept because sometimes the thought of quarters feels a little like too much in a year. I love the trimester thing, and it feels very natural with summer and then the school seasons and everything
Mm-hmm.
like that. But
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about like you aim to launch things on a regular basis based on those trimesters. And you've launched a lot over the last few years. I'm curious, like, how have you evolved or innovated over the last few years, especially with the way that the world has been changing so much and so quickly, with how you're launching things, and what your approach has been with that.
Yeah, I've always tried to do things in a way that feels aligned with who I am. And I know that's a very cliche answer. Um, but the more and more I've gotten to know myself, I use a lot of different personality type rubrics and a lot of these frameworks that are out there. I have no idea who came up with them. I don't know where they came from, but when I read them, they read me like a book, you
Mm,
know, Enneagram, human design, all these sorts of things. And what I've discovered is that I am very much a body type. I
mm,
operate through the intensity of my body, which I never would have realized. I always thought I was in my head too much, and that's apparently not the case. And when I learned those things and I would look back on past launches, I was like, oh my gosh, I was under so much stress. Like I could feel it like in my body. And I'm an 8 on the Enneagram. So apparently um my personality type can take a lot of stress,
yeah.
and we don't realize it's a lot of stress, but our body does. And I was like getting massages all the time. I couldn't sleep. I was working out like to try to get the energy out or relax or in whatever way, shape,
Yeah.
or form. And then when I step into human design, like I'd realize like that's not actually how my energy flows. I'm supposed to guard my peace and my tranquility, and then I will attract things to me. And when I
Mm,
saw that and I learned that, I was like, oh my gosh, that is so true. Every big opportunity that's come my way has found me. I've never gone out and chased it. I've never
mm,
tried to make things happen. And so over the last 2 years, sure, there have been seasons that were very intense. I wrote a book and then had to launch it. And I was like, I'm going to go all in on this. That
mhm,
was really intense. And then I launched a coaching program after that. It was a 6-figure launch. That was super intense. And then the delivery of that was very intense. And I was like, wow, I am out of my like some people say it like this. If it's not a hell yeah, it's a no.
right.
But that's even more so for me. And the way I tell is the way my body reacts to it. If I
Yeah.
feel genuinely excited and I'm like, yes, let's go do this,
Yeah.
that should be a yes, even if it doesn't make sense intellectually.
Mm,
But if it makes sense intellectually, like this would be good for the money, this would be good for the exposure, but I don't feel it. Like I'm like, oh, I don't really want to do this. I should listen to that.
yeah.
So I've just done launches that way. I don't like to overcomplicate things. I feel like we have this belief as business owners that if it's not complicated, I didn't earn it.
Mm,
I don't create landing pages for my webinars very often anymore. I just
yeah.
send them a Zoom link because after COVID, everyone knows what Zoom is. So
Right.
why waste 2 hours creating a landing page, right? When I could be doing something else,
Yeah.
or doing nothing, which is what I always said I wanted my business to allow me to do, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Like, wow, what a novel thought. Um, so I think with the trends, like what I've always tried to do is like keep the core tight. And what I mean by that is I have this personal trainer, and he says to me at least 5 times every workout, keep your core tight, suck your belly in. And it's like an unrelated exercise that we're doing. And he keeps yelling at me about my core. And I realized that is really, he's yelling at me because the core is the core. It controls and brings everything together.
Right.
And in business, my email list, my podcast, that's the core.
Yeah.
Those are the abs and the lower back, if you will, of my business. And if I just keep that tight, I can do anything. I can do any other
Mm,
kind of movement and
yeah.
I'll be all right. I won't hurt myself. I won't overextend myself. I see a lot of people chasing new algorithms on social media, and like I've just never really done
Yeah.
that much. And that's kind of how I've done it. So I like live launches. I like being with people. I like guiding them live. It feels natural to me, and I think people feel that energy, and that's why they want to work with me. So that's kind of how I've always structured the business.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that, that you're just leaning into what works and not getting overly distracted by, like you mentioned, the algorithms. A lot of times people kind of think of those as like shiny objects or distractions.
Yeah.
And so many people can get hung up on them. I've had people obsess over nitpicky things with social media. And as someone who does a lot of social media content creation for clients, I kind of have to play with what's working, what's
Mhm.
not, so that I can answer those questions intelligently for clients and know which ones are worth chasing based on
Right.
their goals. Um, but I do see that the most successful people, like they really, their core their core values and the essence of who their brand is going to come out regardless of whatever channel that they're putting themselves out
Mhm.
on.
Mhm.
And the folks that focus on showing up as a real human tend to tend to do the best.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and so, you know, when people come to me and they're like, I don't like social media, so I want to talk to you to do it for me. It's like, well, you're never really going to be fully happy with what you're seeing because you don't understand it. You don't know how to interact with people. You don't get why people are going to want to engage with your stuff anyways. So I love that. And just as being somebody who, you know, engages or interacts with you on social media and follows your content, I can attest to the fact that, you know, you've mentioned before that you're kind of sporadic sometimes about when you post. You don't necessarily have a strict schedule. And I think sometimes that can really work to your benefit because it does
Yeah.
show up more organically. So
Here's a dirty little secret. This is the first time I've ever said this publicly. Honestly, this is the first time I've ever said this publicly. I don't keep Instagram or Facebook or link. I don't keep any social media apps on my phone. So when I post on Instagram, especially Instagram stories,
yeah.
it usually means I've recorded video throughout the day.
Yep.
I download the app, upload the stories, and delete the app.
Oh, okay.
And I do that
You
like
go through all
multiple
that
times a
work
week.
each time.
Yeah. But if I don't, I open Instagram. I'm like a crack addict. I can't not open it. And there was this, I forget what the name of the documentary was, but it came out on Netflix like several years ago and was talking about like the addictiveness of
Oh,
social media.
the social dilemma.
Yeah, I think that was it.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, this is a slot machine. This thing is built like a slot machine at a
Hmm.
casino. It is
Yeah.
designed to get you to keep going back and refreshing the explore page or whatever. And this is a weird analogy, but look, if
No,
you're
I
gonna
mean,
be
no,
like,
it
if you're
makes
gonna,
perfect sense. You get
yeah,
the
it's like,
dopamine rush.
mm-hmm. And I figured this, even if you're gonna be a drug dealer, the best drug dealers never get high on their own supply. Now, weird way of thinking about it, but that is literally how I think about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, Pablo Escobar killed a lot of people. He's a very evil person, but he never smoked his own dope.
Yeah.
He didn't do that. And so I look at social media in some ways like a drug. Now, it's not totally evil or bad. It's not. I'm not
Right.
comparing it to cocaine, but it's as addictive as that.
Yeah. There is a
And
psychological piece to it for
yeah,
sure.
and I'm just gonna like make sure that I don't fall down that rabbit hole. I'm gonna add value when I'm on those channels, but I'm not going to let it take over my life. And there have been times where I've gone and not logged into Instagram for several days, and I will log on to it on my computer, and it's nowhere near addictive. It
Right.
is the combination of the phone and the social media app
Right.
that's so addictive. And I've never missed a life-changing opportunity because I wasn't on Instagram.
Yeah.
It's never happened to me. So that's different for a lot of other people's businesses that are predicated on social. I totally
Right.
get that. I'm just saying that's my core. My core is email and podcasts. I know that. And
Yep.
so I guard that. I
Yeah.
channel the energy towards that. So yeah.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I was talking with one of our mutual friends, Lauren, a couple weeks
Mhm.
ago, and we were just talking about like the rules that you set. And in the conversation, I just realized there were multiple rules that I set as far as like how I'm setting boundaries with my business and content and different things like that. You know, there's a lot of times where clients will send me LinkedIn messages with information that they want going out on their profiles, and they know that they're supposed to email that, you know, like I
Mhm.
can't be monitoring 10 different social media, whatever inboxes that they just, you know, just because one person prefers one over the other. Um, you know, other things like I just don't check any email, personal or
Mhm.
business, after 6 p.m.
Hmm.
I've set rules for myself because I know if I open up that inbox, then I'm going to get into work mode. And then boom, there
Yep.
goes any downtime that I've even attempted to have, you know? So obviously the rules have changed a little bit for me in the last few years after having a kid. My schedule is different, but
Hmm.
now there's protected time, around dinner time, bedtime.
Yep.
I'm not checking email. I'm not working on work stuff. I might work on it later in the evening when I normally used to check out. But, knowing yourself and knowing your tendencies, where you might slip up, for you saying, I'm going
Hmm.
to delete this app completely off my phone. I mean, that's pretty drastic. That's a lot of work to reinstall and log back in each time and all that fun stuff. So,
Yeah, and it better be worth it. I better be like really, really documenting things or thinking through the value I want to bring to people if I'm going to do it.
right,
And that's what my threshold is, right? It's sort of like um if I didn't really care that much about it, then why waste all the time?
right.
I can just log on my computer and just answer all the DMs that I need to, and I'll be good from there.
Yeah,
So it's just like we talk about how we want certain things like out of our business and this freedom that we want, but we don't take the practical steps to do it, and then we wonder why we're so frazzled.
yeah,
um and I love what you said about the email. Like I used to have I don't have email on my phone either. I don't have my work email on my phone. And um I've had too many nights where I've had my email on my phone. I've perchance or just out of complete blind habit opened an
yep,
email, opened the email account, got a message, and someone said, "Oh, I'd like a refund," or I don't, I want to cancel my membership," or "I'm not going to renew in a mastermind," and it ruins the entire night.
right.
And it, for some reason, off hours, it just sticks with you even further.
Yeah,
It's wild, just the way it
yeah,
works. So I just feel like if we just do a better job of guarding, our energy and all that jazz, like, yeah, it's good.
yeah,
We'll figure it out. So yeah, that's kind of
yeah.
how I think about it.
I love that. I wish I could completely take all those social profiles off. If I did, I'd never figure out how to get back into half of them. But
Yes,
I deal
yes,
with so
yes.
many different passwords for people. But yeah, no, it is interesting. And it's funny too when you go through days where you're just like so in the zone with work stuff. Like,
Hmm.
for example, when I record interviews like this, I turn my focus for do not disturb on
Hmm.
so that if texts come in, I don't get the notifications. I don't, and then initially I did it for sound.
Mm.
There's been multiple days where like I'll just forget that it's off and
Yep.
I'll be working for hours after an interview. And then all of a sudden I look at my phone and I realize I've got all these text messages and, missed phone calls and things. And then you look at it and you're like, well, I didn't really miss that much. Like none of this stuff is earth shattering that I needed to have this on all the time, and it was so freeing to just sit there and crank away at something when normally you would get interrupted. So,
The world did not end.
right.
Like, it's kind of like it sort of sometimes lets us down, I think, in some way or another. But then you have to face the reality that like the things will go on without you. It's not
Hmm.
the worst in the world. Like I find myself like I work 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, and like I'll sleep in on Friday,
Hmm.
and then I'll be like, oh, let me just check my email real quick. I'm not supposed to work today. And then I see a message, and it's like Friday 2 p.m.
Yeah.
And I've thought this a million times. That person is going to finish work in 2 hours. I don't need to do this right now. They're
Right.
not even expecting a response at Friday, on
Yep.
Friday afternoon, right? And it's just so crazy. Like we become the worst boss we've ever had. That
Yeah.
is absolutely true. When you're in this line of work, you easily become the worst boss you've ever had. And it's got to it's got to stop somewhere. Like you got to draw a line somewhere. Like I took a month off in June. I'm taking another month off in December. And that's my thing for this year. And it fit my life. And Val, when I was leading up to the June break, I was so stressed in May. I was like, yeah, I definitely need this vacation. I am frazzled. Right now, as I'm heading into this December, I don't even feel like I need a vacation. I'm
Hmm.
like, maybe I should work in December because I feel really good.
Yeah.
But that's actually the point, to
Yeah.
not have to wait until you're dying,
Right.
and really take control of like your time, your energy. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big believer in this, and no one will ever change my mind about it because I've never seen a scenario in nearly 8 years of business where
Yeah.
like I've screwed myself over because I missed something,
Right.
So yeah, yep,
Yeah. The opportunities that you're meant to get will be right
mm-hmm,
there when you need them. So
yep, mm-hmm,
yeah.
mm-hmm,
And so I also remember just from, sitting in on some of your stuff recently, you've got some fun things in the works here for the next year. So when you do come back from this little hiatus in December, you got some fun things in the works. Um, Tell me a little bit about the marketing school. What brought you to kind of creating that? What's exciting you about that?
yeah. So what I decided to do is take all 7 years of programs and courses I've created, um, and just stuff them into one thing.
Mm,
Because I've never first, and I'm not saying this like in a weird way, but I've probably done nearly everything that you can in this industry from a marketing perspective. I've been a copywriter, I've run conferences, I've run workshops, I've done summits, I've done live launches, I've done like literally everything. As a marketer, I've done it. And yet, I only had one or two programs for one or two specific things over the years. And because I've done everything, I felt like I should resource people with everything because I've had
yeah,
experience in all of it. But I've never had the opportunity to do that. And I couldn't in the last 2 years because I had a book coming out and I
yeah,
didn't want to confuse my audience. I didn't want to confuse the market. So there's this principle I sort of live by. I think this work-life balance thing is a little ridiculous. It's not real, right? What I'm after more is like harmony. And what I
mm,
mean by that is that you pay the appropriate amount of attention to the appropriate thing for the appropriate amount of time. It's just like an orchestra. You go see a concert, the violins, appropriate thing, play a certain lead line in the piece, and you as a musician get this, you know, appropriate amount of time,
yeah,
right? And they're not blaring the entire piece. It's just what needs to be focused on for that moment. So for the last 2 years, I've been focused on the book. I gave it the appropriate amount of attention. But even when I was launching the book, I knew I wanted to train people comprehensively in marketing and have something for them.
yeah,
I was so tired of everyone running around in circles because there was some expert out there that only taught one thing, and that was better for their bottom line, but it wasn't better for the end user or the client. So I've dumped everything into this program. People get everything I've created, but there's a big live coaching aspect in it. I mean, we do 2 calls a month.
yeah,
Let's be honest, that's what most people come for. They don't sit there and go through the content and implement. That's probably less than 5%
yeah.
of the population. They can actually do that for themselves. The rest need that group dynamic and that movement together. So that's where it all stems from.
Nice.
And I feel like I'm adding really good value to the market. It feels aligned with me. And I also don't want to launch 17 different things in a year.
Yeah,
I just want to launch this one thing and make it comprehensive for people and simplify my business model. And that's just kind of where I'm at. So,
that's great.
yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun. We'll do a formal launch like probably early 2023,
Yeah,
but we're testing it out right now and it's gone really well. So,
that's
yeah,
awesome.
that's where
Yeah,
we're at.
nice. Well,
Yeah.
I love that. I know just the content I've consumed from you over the years has always been really high quality. So I can only imagine that what people are going to get in this is
Oh,
going to be
thanks.
really great as well. So if you were to give somebody advice today about how they could go off and get their next win in marketing, whether it's big or small, a micro win or one major huge thing, whatever,
Mhm.
whatever. What advice would you give someone who's listening today about going after your next marketing win?
I would say that the key to like really, really nailing down your marketing is all in copywriting. That's what I like. Even that business that I mentioned where I was working I took over the marketing for the academy.
Yeah.
All I really did was upgrade the copy. We didn't
Mm,
even design a new website. and the business just exploded. People overlook copywriting because they say, well, I'm not a writer, or there's social media, we don't really need writing.
Right.
But you got to write the captions, you got to write the headline of the video, you
Mm-hmm.
got to, if you're on YouTube, you got to write the headline. YouTube video, YouTubers they understand copywriting. Most people don't realize that. A lot of them are writing their own script and then recording the video. That's what makes it so good. So here, everyone else thinks that you just need good video and good production, but those creators sat down and wrote a script, headlined it. They're functioning as a copywriter. It's super, super important. That's the first thing, and that's where I would start.
Yeah.
And then as you kind of move into it, like I said this before, but like we often think that if it's not complicated, we didn't earn it. It's not it doesn't have to be super complex. Email your list regularly. Do things that grow your email list.
Yeah.
I very seldom met businesses where their social media was more important than their email list.
Yeah.
And understand what the core is of your particular business. For me, I've said it, a few times, it's email and podcast. And that's what I do. That's why I go on podcasts,
Yeah.
but I don't go on Instagram lives. I don't, do all these, I don't try to chase speaking engagements and, go out of the house and live on the road. That's just not what I want.
Right.
I know the core. And if that is what you want, then understand that and then stop doing all these other things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of really where I focus and how I kind of like make those decisions.
Yeah. That's great. Do you have any tips for somebody if they want to, or resources or books or whatever, of if somebody wanted to improve their copywriting? How would you,
Yeah.
what advice would you give someone? Because that is something that a lot of people feel intimidated by.
Mm-hmm.
They might feel like they might be a great writer and they just are nervous about it. Or maybe they really just struggled with it legitimately.
Yeah. This is going to sound crazy, but the thing that helped me improve copywriting the most, I've never taken like a full-fledged copywriting course or been mentored by anybody in copywriting. I think a lot
Sure.
of people assume that, but that's not what happened with me. I took a little $300 course on copywriting from a company called AWAI. I think it stands for American Writers and Artists Inc. I don't know why. I don't know. I've never met an artist there. All they do is teach copywriting.
Okay.
And they had a tiny little course, and I signed up for that because I didn't want to spend $2,000 if I didn't know I would do it. And
Right.
that's another thing. I don't understand why people spend the equivalent of like a semester in college on courses, and they've never proven to themselves that they can actually like implement anything.
Right.
It's really dumb. In all honesty, it's really dumb. And that's why the industry that we're in is like, it is fueled by people who do not take action.
Right.
If people took action, we'd all be broke. We'd sell one thing and people would have growing businesses,
Right.
But what they had me do in that course, and this was all self-taught, I didn't even go on any coaching calls. They said, take these sales letters. They were like classic sales letters, hand copy them 3 times each in a notebook, and then stand up and read them out loud 3 times each. And
Wow.
I have my notebook somewhere at my place where I have that. Like, and Val, I tell you that improved my copywriting so much I can't even quantify it. Like, I got into the mind of the writer. Why did he write this a certain way? Why did
Right.
he use these words? Why did he use that term? Why did he use this hook here? And it got imprinted in me. And people make fun of that. They think like, you got to take some super crazy course. Yeah, some books are good.
Right.
There are a lot of good books on it, actually. But taking that action, you can't learn how to swim by reading a book. And it's the same with copywriting. You can't learn how to write better copy by just reading these books. You have to get it in you.
Yeah.
What do you do when you learn to swim? You kind of follow what the instructor's telling you, right? And that's what I liken it to. in that
Wow.
situation scenario. So yeah.
That's so
Yep.
fascinating because like as you were saying that, I'm picturing me in calculus class back in the day, high school, college, where I would literally to study for tests would rewrite and go through the entire math problem from start to finish. And that was the only way that I could imprint what the
hmm
next steps were. And I probably rewrote those problems, like you're saying, 2 or 3 times,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And for me, I learned, I mean, I've got it sitting next to me at all times. I have the handwritten to-dos. As much as I use digital tools for project management, I still have to use a written to-do list. There's something, at
Mm.
least for me and how I learn in like writing it down. So I can totally
hmm
see if you're trying to change the way your mind thinks, especially when it comes to copywriting, the power of slowing down enough
Yep.
to write it, not type it, but write it.
hmm
That would allow your brain enough time to process what's going on with the words that you're writing. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing that. That's
Oh,
really
I'm glad. Yeah.
interesting.
It's so true. And most people are not going to do it.
Yeah.
I did not spend 10 grand on a bunch of swipe files and, videos that I know I'm never going to watch.
Right.
It was $300. They had like 10 sales letters in there, and I just hand copied them. It took me hours, not all in
Yeah.
one shot, over the course of several weeks and
Yeah.
months. I will still do that once in a while when I
Yeah.
read a good sales letter, because I want to keep sharp. Um,
I love it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that. I might get back into rewriting my calculus notes now.
Calculus problems. You're good without calculus now.
Forget
You
about
moved on.
calculus.
We moved on. We got that.
Oh
Those
yeah.
professionals do it. So.
Yeah. Yeah. You look back at the stuff that you learned and you're like, oh, well, I learned
hmm
some great skills in the process of learning that information, but the actual calculus, I'll pass on
Yep.
that.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Mike, if people want to get more from you, obviously you're not going to reply immediately to DMs on Instagram and all the things, but where is the best place for people to go seek you out if they want to learn more from you online?
Yeah, Instagram and LinkedIn are probably the channels that I'm the most active on. But I would say if you like podcasts, because you're listening to us here on this podcast, go over to mine, give mine a few episodes, give it a shot for a few episodes. It's called You Are the Brand. It's all about building a personal brand, marketing yourself, sharing your stories in a non-sleazy way, right? To get your ideas and expertise out into the world. And yeah, it's a fun show. There's definitely a personal side of me that people will see, but I bring experts like you in and others to come in and really share practical tips on how to do this whole marketing thing in a way that feels, and is authentic and aligned with who you are. So yeah, give it a shot.
Awesome. Well, thanks. And thanks so much for coming on and sharing, stuff that you've never shared before with the world,
Yeah,
as well as stuff I'm sure you probably said millions of times, but appreciate the insights you share day in and day out and just your willingness to be open with people about how you approach marketing and the human side that you bring to it.
cool. My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Val.
If you liked what you just heard, please hit subscribe to make sure you don't miss any of our future episodes. And while you're at it, go ahead and leave us a review. That not only helps us out, but it helps others discover great interviews just like this one.